This podcast is brought to you by Podspot Events.
Hello and welcome to the Bondi podcast. I'm your host, Chris Beattie. The guest on this episode is Alfie Robertson from the Instagram account, Alfie Gets Hard. We decided to get Alfie in to talk about his experience doing the 75 Hard Challenge. For those of you that don't know, the 75 Hard Challenge is a fitness challenge that's really gained in popularity more recently, but was initially developed by Andy Frisella back in 2019. 75 Hard is a physical and mental challenge that has 7 rules. Those 7 rules are 2 45-minute workouts, follow a diet plan that is ultimately beneficial for your overall health, drink 4 litres of water, no alcohol, read 10 pages of a book, take a progress pic, and finally the most important rule, complete each of those tasks on a daily basis for 75 consecutive days. Alfie and I also talked about the business that he started earlier this year but ultimately walked away from and the learnings that he took from it, as well as his tips for creating content and building an audience on social media. I learned a lot from this conversation with Alfie and actually came away from it feeling more energised and motivated about improving my own health and fitness. So I hope you enjoy watching or listening to this episode as much as I enjoyed recording it with Alfie. As always, give us a follow on Instagram at the Bondi Podcast to keep up to date with all of our episodes and guests. Like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, and you'll find all of our episodes on Spotify. Cheers. Alfie, welcome to the podcast, mate. Thanks very much for coming in, giving up some of your time.
Thank you very much for having me. It's a pleasure.
First question, mate. What's your favourite thing about Bondi?
It's got to be the morning community. I think waking up, it's so unique. Like, there's not many places out there where you can get up at 5:30, 5 a.m. in the morning, and you feel sort of lazy for almost waking up that late because people are out there red-faced, they've got a sweat on, people running on the beach, coming out of the water, down at the bars. It's just so lively and active, and I think, yeah, it's just a vibrant community of people that love that lifestyle of fitness, wellness, and outdoors.
Yeah, mate, it's my favourite part of the day, and I tell all my friends that. Like, I'm in bed real early, and I'm up at like 5 a.m. out the door for 5:30. It's my favourite part of the day. Did you have that growing up? Were you in that sort of early morning environment growing up in New Zealand, or is that something you've only really got into since moving to Bondi?
Yeah, definitely. So I grew up on a little island called Waiheke, just off the coast of Auckland. Beautiful little island if anyone heads out to New Zealand. And yeah, it was early wake-ups because I had to get the ferry into school every day. So pretty unique commute, taking the boat in. But I think that maybe like started what became like early rising and this idea of always being a very organised person because I had to work backwards from a ferry schedule. Missed the ferry, it's an hour till the next one. And I remember the 8:45 and the 10:30 p.m. were the latest ferries that went on the weekdays. And if you missed those, you're stuck in the city, and that was, an expensive mistake.
Not a bad commute to school, though, for a little kid.
No, it was awesome, but definitely as I started playing more rugby and getting into, the fitness, and the school had a great gym and some great facilities. We were a big rugby school. Definitely as that picked up, I decided to board for my last couple of years, which was a good decision as well. I think that's where I touched into the community, being surrounded by like-minded people, so we had a lot of good memories in that boarding house.
Beautiful, mate. So obviously you're here today to talk about your experience doing the 75 Hard Challenge. But where I'd actually like to start this discussion today is if I can take you back to when we first met and the project that you were working on when we first met in the cafe at Bamboo Gym in Uluwatu. You were working on a little startup called Subbit. From recent conversations with you, you've told me you've decided to can Subbit. I was hoping you could maybe tell us a little bit about what Subbit was supposed to be, the decision around deciding to can it and not pursue it despite a lot of energy and effort that you put into it, and any learnings or key takeaways from the overall experience.
Yeah, definitely. What a journey. Summit is, some great memories from that. I think you learn a lot more from your failures, and that's a great example of it. So I think rewinding back to 2022, basically, 2 boys from New Zealand, 2 great entrepreneurs, Toby and Jack, came over, bright-eyed and bushy, first time to Sydney, and they launched Easy Rent. And they reached out before they came, and the whole concept was this idea of shared living, so looking at the subletting market, and a market that's very unregulated, there's no real process or company in place there, and there's a lot of sort of, I guess, early day solutions that yeah, they just haven't fixed the problem at all. So it exists on Marketplace, it exists from peer-to-peer, so through word of mouth. And their idea was basically to come in, put a platform there that could build this sort of community around short-term living, fixing a housing crisis, so the rental issues that exist here in Sydney, along with many major cities. And the way of doing that was providing a platform so when people went overseas, they could sublet their house effectively through them. They would take a bond, they would manage the rent payment. So really being a payment platform for that as well. They had amazing uptake and built a awesome community. They targeted Irish in Bondi, which I think was just such a unique marketing spin. And because of that, they just built in this epic community in Sydney. Did super well. They built that all the way up to 1,500 places filled in a year and taking 10% on rent. They did some really good numbers. Anyway, towards the end of 2022, I guess early 2023, they decided to shut the business down and head over to New York. They felt that the product had been tested here. And that's where they moved over to New York and decided to launch it there. As sort of part of someone who went in and helped them out and was part of that sort of advisory or, I don't know, maybe a consultancy capacity, thought they were a little bit crazy to shut the business down completely here, given all the success and the audience that they had built here. But, you know, speaking volumes, they've now raised 4 or 5 million off the back of that. So it was definitely the right decision. And they're now in New York, rebranded to Kiki. Definitely check them out. Awesome founders on such a cool journey. But them leaving for me was an opportunity. I sort of said to them, look, you've clearly shown that there's a product market fit here. This needs filling. So I decided, why not add it to something that I would do as well, which I think at the time felt like an easy decision of one product, one brand leaving. I would just slot in there and fill the problem that they had solved. That was a completely, I think, overestimation of how much time, effort, and determination it takes to build a brand like that, particularly one that is so person to person. You know, there's so many unique different situations and scenarios in which you need to be fully on board with the brand and really at a customer level and build that community out from it. So they built so much trust and all that brand equity I think I overlooked. So what ended up happening was building this fantastic, or what I thought was a fantastic product, putting a lot of time, energy and money behind that. Coming back, you know, after big travel, meeting you in Bali, then to Europe, and then launching that here and realizing very quickly that actually the product I had built, which was a marketplace, was not the product that really fit the market. There'd also been like massive encroachment from other competitors or other people who had seen the opportunity and jumped into that space faster. So I think two things lacked. One was defining proper product market fit of my own product, not just assuming that because I had worked and understood some of the easy rent model, I could just apply their learnings. And the second one was speed to market. By the time I actually got there, it was, 5-6 months on. And the issue being was by that time, I basically had gotten to a point where the market had evolved enough where, there wasn't really the same level of product market fit that I thought I had when I was first there. The opportunity had been taken in a lot of ways. So that was basically the story start to finish. So I decided to shut that down. But part of launching that was also going into the 75 hard challenge, with the idea being that I would use the challenge as a way, as like a mental, physical reset to sort of really focus on building this brand and putting a lot of time and energy behind that. Obviously, a big part of the challenge is no alcohol, so that takes out a lot of the distractions. So you have a lot more time in your day to, build these sort of businesses and really focus around that. But what ended up happening was I realized quite quickly that the passion was really behind the fitness, the challenge, the discipline, and the mindset and lifestyle that came with that, and less so to do with this short-term subletting community that I was trying to take off the ground.
So if you can take me to that day or that moment in time where you were just made the decision, I need to can this. It's not for me. What was sort of going through your mind at that time?
Yeah, definitely. I think I saw it pretty early on as I started to get a few matches. It probably took me about 5 matches and fiddling around with dates, and some people had pets and then they were in a couple and didn't say they were in a couple, and I just realized the intricacies of matching two people, aligning the dates, type of people that they want, pets, not pets, all of these things, including housemates, was just like, okay, this is probably a problem that I don't want to spend the next 2 years trying to get off the ground and fix. And I'd rather be putting my effort into a real passion of mine, which sort of came out the back of this, which was that fitness, lifestyle, and discipline.
So despite all that energy and effort, and you said money that you've put into that venture, you did make that difficult decision to cut your losses, and you seem to have made that decision fairly early on, which I can imagine a lot of people maybe waste a few more months there, wasting energy and effort and time. So in a way, commendable to cut your losses pretty early. What are the key takeaways or learnings you took from the experience, Alfie?
Yeah, well, I think there's that sunk cost fallacy, right? That you put that time, effort in, and therefore there should be an expected return, or you should keep burrowing away at the same hole. I think you just have to cut, and you've got to be willing to take a step back and really understand that and just be like, okay, well, yes, it's a sunk cost, but this is a bigger picture thing, right? Like if I'm committing this and committing the next 2 or 3 years, it's like, what is the opportunity cost of doing that as well? I do believe, yeah, potentially if I had like stuck with it and gave it my all, maybe I would have found a way to do that. And maybe that would be a validation of like determination, grit, and all those things. But if early on you've got the indicators that this isn't actually something you want to do for the foreseeable future, like we're talking 1 or 2 years, let alone a lifetime of putting this, it's not really a full passion project. I think I more saw it as like a quick opportunity to jump on. So I think once you've established that and realized it's a sunken cost, that money's gone, and you've got to accept that and take the learnings, then it's an easy decision to make.
But you making that decision at that point in time has actually led to something pretty cool, which we're going to get onto.
Yeah, definitely.
So Alfie, you're obviously here today to talk about your experience doing the 75 Hard Challenge. The reason I've actually asked you to come in today to talk about the 75 Hard Challenge, it's really based around that Instagram account that you had created. So as part of the 75 Hard Challenge, you decided to keep a video diary of your progress throughout the challenge. Instagram page is Alfie Gets Hard, which is a great name. But that Instagram account really took off, I suppose. I imagine when you started the account, it was probably just, friends and family watching. I had a little look at the numbers today. It's up at around 74,000 followers, mate. Those are big numbers over the course of about 3 months.
Yeah, coming up on 100 days. Definitely, definitely some big numbers. I mean, started from creating a new account, which for anyone looking to create an account out there, I definitely recommend it. I basically created a fresh new account from my normal account and said, look, if anyone wants to follow my fitness diary, I appreciate you probably didn't follow this account to be spammed with all my fitness shenanigans. And from that, I think about 100 people followed. So it's a good example to sort of show like where your audience on your normal account really is, and then to tailor content specifically around that. So definitely recommend if anyone's going to start out to do that.
So at what point, so started off with 100 followers?
Yeah.
So at what point did you notice it, start to take off?
Yeah, probably 45, 50 days in.
That long?
Yeah, well, the good thing about a 75-day challenge is one, you're going to stay consistent for 75 days, which the algorithm and social media rewards massively. So consistency is king over everything else. And also you've got content to post every day because you're training twice a day, you're outdoors, what you're eating, what your diet is, you're dialed in for that 75 days. So it's very easy to create content for.
So that's the secret, is the consistency and the posting every day?
100%. Yeah, consistency, but then I think what the consistency breeds is a review of your content continuously. So if you're striving to make better content every day, which I think naturally comes when you get more familiar with the editing tools, when you get more familiar with filming, you get the feedback because it's instant feedback loop, right? You post it, you see the results tomorrow. So as long as you're taking that on board, seeing what's working, and then constantly improving, then the consistency will shine through.
So you appear to have found the magic formula pretty early on, mate. What advice would you give to people who are, content creation is quite a big thing these days. So what advice would you give to people that are trying to create content or trying to build an audience for their own brand or business?
Yeah, I think anything you put online comes back to value, but I think you can split value into asking the question of why do people watch content? And I think it's either education or entertainment. And once you realize that really those are the two buckets that people are looking for, And entertainment has many forms. You can inspire people, you can anger people, you can make people love you, hate you. You know, there's many forms of entertainment. And education, well, then just think about, you know, what's the account really meant to be about? If it's about how to podcast, you've got your education tools of how to set up your mic, how to get good audio, how to attract good talent to come on. You know, you've got your pillars that break under that. For a fitness account, it's pretty simple. You've got your workouts, your nutrition, your lifestyle, and your mindset. And once you realize those are sort of the 4 categories, and then you've got these 2 buckets of education and entertainment, anything under that is just going to fall under one of those categories. And I think creating a strong following on social media is just having varied, consistent content that hits all of those pillars and buckets daily.
Yeah. And the blend between Instagram and TikTok?
Yeah, I mean, it's just a repost strategy. So pretty much the same for short form content. I think where it gets complicated and where you can layer in and sort of level up is when you get to that long form. And it's how are you communicating between the different mediums of how you're taking long form, cutting it down to short form, something you do for the podcast, and vice versa as well. How are the messages consistent from your short form to your long form? The basic way I see it is short form is like where a lot of your virality is. So I think there's growing your audience, which is probably what we're touching on now, and then there's a question around monetizing your audience. And for that side, it's like your short form is your virality. That's where you can entertain and educate in this viral manner. You're trying to condense your education tools into short form content, which is super unique and probably contributing to the low attention span of our population. But with that, it's how do you get your message across in the shortest amount of time or with the shortest amount of words. Then your long form content is how do you build trust with your audience. That's where they really get to know who you are, understand a bit more about what you stand for, what you believe in, and you get to flesh out some of those concepts you may have only introduced in the short form.
And was this part of the plan when you first started the account, mate, or is this sort of happened nearly accidentally? You clearly know what you're talking about in terms of putting content out there, but was this in line with your expectations? Was this what you were aiming for?
No, so yeah, it's a great question. I think I sit here talking about like I know what I'm talking about, which I do with most topics, even if I don't. But now I guess there's a bit of validation behind growing that audience and seeing it work. I think going in, it actually started out around accountability. But I think anyone who posts online consistently would be lying if they don't say they don't want an audience. I mean, why would they put in that effort? Like, it's not just if it was a personal diary, I would have made a private account, right? I think there's an element of accountability because you put it out into the public sphere, so people know that you're doing it, so they'll hold you accountable. But more for me as well is like potential inspiration. You know, I put it in, then I had 2 or 3 friends that were like, hey, I'll jump in as well and do the 75 hard challenge with you. And that was cool as well, just to see how that could happen. And even early on, even when I only had 1,000, 2,000 followers, I think getting that initial really positive feedback encouraged me to create the content and continue creating the content.
Yeah, and those topless photos don't hurt either, mate.
It's all part of it, for sure. It's definitely all part of it.
Yeah. All right, mate, let's actually get into the detail of the 75 hard challenge. So you started on the 21st of August this year. How did you first hear about the challenge and why did you decide to do it?
Yeah, so this challenge, I tried to complete it in 2021, post-COVID. So I had actually given it a go before. I downloaded the app, and not to slander the 75 hard challenge, great movement, but the app is not worth downloading. It is essentially like a fancy checklist that you could just make in your notes. But I tried it then, and I think, well, I didn't create an Instagram account, so maybe that speaks to the accountability of it. But yeah, it was coming off the back of a good trip, in Bali where I met yourself, spent a lot of time traveling and moving around this year. And then going to, through Europe, I think I came back, wanted that mental, physical reset. A big part of it as well was launching the business, the business that's now no longer. And I think going into that was like, okay, how can I really set those barriers for discipline, mindset? I think the mental clarity for me that comes from removing myself, abstaining from alcohol was huge. So I think building something around that where it's like, okay, there's the accountability of not just someone asks you, are you having a drink? And I just have to go, nah, not tonight. I can go, no, I'm actually day 55 of my 75 hard challenge. And it was funny because the more days I ticked up, the more people were actually interested in, oh, how's the challenge going, rather than saying, oh, you're not drinking tonight, that's weird. Whereas like when you're 7 days in or 5 days in, people go, oh, only 5, mate, just start it again. You can start it again next week. But when you're 55 days in, people are a bit more invested because they can see that you're serious about it as well.
Yeah. So I think from doing my research into the challenge, mate, people get into it for usually like one of two reasons. Like yourself, it can be a bit of a reset. So someone who is generally healthy physically and mentally, and just a bit of a reset. Or some people actually use it as a kickstart. Some people have maybe slacked off a bit on their physical or mental health, and they want to embark on this challenge to sort of help with that. So it sounds like your physical and mental health was probably in a pretty good spot going into the challenge in the first place.
Yeah, definitely. I think the reason I would shy away from using it as a kickstart for everything physical and mental is that it's a pretty full-on challenge. If you're going from 0 workouts a week to twice a day, is that really sustainable for 75 days straight off the back? Like, are you better off building up some level of fitness and discipline and start, one at a time instead of adopting like all 7, 8 of these challenges and trying to commit to them daily? So for me, it was coming in at like relatively high, like physical and mental sort of level. Like I felt good about life, but it was like, how could I really fine tune it? And then, assign myself some additional tasks as well.
Yeah, let's get on to those additional tasks, mate. So there are 7 golden rules of the 75 hard challenge. You decided to add 5 on top of that because the challenge wasn't, hard enough for you, Alfie. Your 5 additional rules were talk to a stranger on a daily basis, journal tasks, cold plunge every day, sunrise every day, and post something on Instagram or social media every day. Why did you decide to add these rules?
Yeah, so I think post something every day, that was, the accountability piece. It was, engaging in social media. I think I knew I wanted to build an audience. And that was part of it as well, right? It's like basically actually spending some time in Bali. That's where I sort of saw the power of an audience. So I was traveling there with Jake, who's Elastic Boy on Instagram, and he started posting in February. We actually bought him his tripod for his birthday in February. And that was us sort of as a friend group saying, look, mate, you do some amazing stuff. He can fold himself into all sorts of weird and wonderful shapes. And with that, we said, look, you need to start posting because you've got such a unique training style. And, sure enough, he did. It was slow at the start. And then by May, the man just absolutely blew up. In 3 days, he went from 5,000 to I think 150,000, then 250,000. All of a sudden, Bear Grylls is following him. He's talking to Kelly Slater. This access to a network that previously never would have given someone like that the time of day, not necessarily because ill judgment of person, but just the social credibility that having an audience gives you is amazing. So I saw that and then saw that in the flesh in Bali when we were living there. We're out, Jay Alvarez and Kyle Smith, who's a professional surfer, were out at the bar, bumped into them, we got chatting, and then next thing we know, we're playing paddle, going surfing, just this access to a previously unattainable audience, someone I'd watched on YouTube for years and years and never thought I'd be able to be on the same paddle court as. Like, what a strange sort of jump to that. So I think that's when I really switched on and was like, okay, building an audience is important. And then for someone who's always been interested in building my own business, I think I was like, okay, well, having an audience in today's age is like essentially having the eyeballs and the digital currency of today. So that became an important part of it. So yeah, the daily challenge, half accountability, half knowing that, if you stick to something for 75 days, you're going to see potentially some good results.
And then other things like talking to a stranger, the cold plunge, the sunrise.
Yeah, so sunrise in Bondi, it's beautiful, eastern beaches, sunrise in the east, so we're very fortunate that we get that. The cold plunge, so many benefits to cold plunge, won't go into those, but I think taking that on for a daily challenge is fantastic, particularly in the colder months. It's easy in summer. And then the last one would be around talking to a stranger daily. This was a really good challenge. I think something that everyone should do. The conversations could be as small as saying hi to the bus driver or talking to a waiter or waitress in a restaurant, or it could be as long as going and engaging and talking to that person that you've always wanted to talk to in the gym, or you've always wanted to talk to in your class or work or whatever it is. But I think engaging a stranger like that really puts you a little bit out of your comfort zone and makes you think like, okay, I'm going to have to approach this person. I'm going to have to do it. I don't really want to do it, but I've said that I'm going to do it every day. And by the end, it's so easy. It just becomes natural.
Yeah, mate, I love it. And like the eastern suburbs, and particularly Bondi, is just like the perfect place to go and chat to you around them because there's so many interesting folks kicking about here. Hence the reason for the podcast. Any interesting conversations or experiences come from those stranger chats?
Yeah, definitely. One of the first people I went up to was a couple, and they were I was filming as part of my daily sort of content, jumping in the water, and I managed to clip them on the side of my time lapse, and they came over and actually chatted to me, so it made my daily stranger conversation very easy. But yeah, great bloke. Ended up catching up with him a few times. He was also doing another challenge as well. Wasn't doing the 75 hard, but a shared sort of pursuit of the superior self that we bonded over. And then, ended up like looking at property together. There was a whole sort of myriad of stuff that came out of that. So fortunate for that.
Beautiful, mate. I love that. So look, one of the moving from your additional rules back to the golden rules, and one of the golden rules is in relation to your diet. And I think the rule is something along the lines of adhere to a diet of your choice. Now it has to be it can't be pizza every night. That can't be your diet. It has to be something that's beneficial to your health, to your overall health and well-being. You chose something called an ancestral diet, and it's something I'm not too familiar about. So I was hoping you can maybe tell me what an ancestral diet is and why you decided to go down that route and maybe some of the benefits of it as well.
Yeah, definitely. So going in, fortunate that the diet was already pretty much there, but I think cleaning it up a little bit and just making it a little bit stricter. But the whole ancestral diet trend is really more moving around whole foods and moving back to what our ancestors consumed. It's animal dominant, not animal based, so still have plenty of vegetables and see a lot of benefits in that. I think ancestral supplements and ancestral dieting sort of been bundled up with the Liver King movement. So trying to separate it a little bit from that, still have vegetables and all those things, but it's really looking at whole food sources and ways that we can sort of have these, highly sustaining food groups that we consume on a daily basis, sort of all natural, all from the earth.
So give me an example. What did a day look like?
So wake up, probably Greek yogurt. It will be honey, banana, mango, blueberries, so lots of fruit. And for lunch, one of my favorites is mince, avocado, eggs, and banana. Don't bash it until you try it. I do have the mince and banana as sort of a separate, it's almost like a dessert. And then dinner will be some leafy salad, could be a steak, lots of pumpkin, that sort of style, maybe a roast, something like that.
So is it high protein, high fat diet, or is there still a lot of carbs in there? Obviously, you're getting your carbs from like your veg and stuff.
Yeah, so the carbs coming from the veg and the fruit, but I tend to stick away. So no grains, so no processed grains, so no oats, pasta, bread. So you're getting all of your carbohydrates from root vegetables and fruit, really. So generally pretty low.
So what are the benefits of this particular diet?
I mean, diet and all of these things, diet and fitness is so intricate. The human body's so subjective, right? But anecdotally, which I can speak to, and then I can speak to maybe some of the evidence as well. But anecdotally, it's just sustained energy for me. That's the biggest one. So not having these crashes, these carb lows and highs, it's having sustained energy throughout the whole day. And then evidence-based, I mean, Huberman, Rhonda Patrick, Andy Galpel, Stan Effing, there's so many good people to lean on in terms of the research behind this as well. So a big point of call for me is Dr. Rhonda Patrick. She's great to follow. She's got a full diet plan online. I basically follow a lot of those protocols.
Sounds like you've done your homework.
Yeah, definitely. Got it now.
Good to hear, mate. So to complete or to even embark on a challenge like this, Alfie, you must need a good daily routine. So what did a typical day look like in terms of waking up, what you eat, your training, when you eat, when you're going to bed, when you're reading your book?
Yeah. The book one is important as well. That was one of the hardest things of the challenge, actually, because I normally left it until the end of the day, until the end of the challenge. I was like, right, I need to do this in the morning because otherwise I'm not going to do it. And the issue is like you get to bed, particularly if you're working all day, like you read a lot for work generally. And then you curl up in bed and you think, I'll read in bed. But 10 pages in bed while the light's dimmed, it's tough.
I usually get about 2 or 3 and then I'm done, mate.
Exactly. I mean, it's better than sticking on and scrolling on your phone all night, but it's definitely less stimulating. So it does put you to bed. But yeah, in terms of routine, normally up by about 5, jump in the cold tub straight away. That's like roll out of bed, get in there no matter what. Then if I'm running,
Sorry, how long in the cold tub?
5 minutes. So I normally do a minute for every degree it is over 0.
Okay, so it was about 5 degrees.
Yeah, it's about
That's
5
pretty good,
degrees,
mate.
5 minutes. So you're pretty cold by the end. Let that body warm up. Normally do a bit of like stretching, or if I'm out running, I try to run. If I'm running, I will run before the cold plunge, and I'll plunge after, just for recovery benefits. And yeah, running cold is, no one likes that.
Nah.
From there, I'll normally go around, catch the sunrise. So either I'm running for the sunrise or I'm just watching it. Get my hangs in. So a big one is hang down at the Bondi bars. I do 3 sets of 1 minute, just hanging on the bars. Great, like morning exercise, would encourage everyone does it.
So, sorry, let's touch on that for a sec. What do you do?
So just literally dead hang, hold the bar,
For how long?
a minute, minute and a half, 3 sets.
Beautiful. Stretch out that lower back.
Exactly. Great way to wake up. It is tough in the morning with your grip. It's normally when it's at its weakest, but it's worth doing. From there, jump in the water, head back home. That's breakfast, shower, get into work.
So at this stage, unless you're doing a run, you've not done a workout?
No, not yet. So at this stage, haven't done a workout. Normally work out around 9 or 10 a.m. I'm pretty fortunate. I work remote. So companies based in Singapore, so I had this sort of remote working aspect where I could fit my schedule pretty flexibly around what I wanted to do. Also, Singapore is a couple hours behind us, so basically the morning I had a little bit more free. From there, we'll train, have lunch, then basically work until the afternoon, and then if I haven't run that day, that's where I'll hit another workout before dinner.
What sort of workouts were you doing?
So as a mixture, it'll be at least 1 resistance session.
A day?
Yeah, so typically the split I run is like a full body pull, full body push. Then I do a mobility and core compression, full body pull, full body push, mobility and arms. And then on Sundays, like a long run and a stretching session. And then I'd pair that with either a run or a HIIT session. So like HIIT cardio.
So did the stretching session count as a workout?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Which it does technically. Like you can do active stretching and it's like more mobility based. But yeah, even I think they say like walking like at a reasonable pace for 45 minutes counts as a workout.
Yeah, fair enough. And you chucked in a marathon there just for good measure, mate?
Yeah. Well, I had a marathon signed up in September, so it just happened to fall in the middle of it, which was good. It was good timing to, train towards something and have a good way to break up the sessions.
So how did you sort of balance the marathon training with the other training?
I mean, I think any endurance athlete, not that I'm particularly an endurance athlete, but anyone going after a marathon should have a pretty good resistance training program in place. Like you need to build up the muscles around your tendons and joints. So yeah, just dialed in around that. A lot of like lower body work and then some added upper body work. But yeah, just sort of rotated through that training. It was very doable.
And how'd you go during the marathon?
Good. It was tough. I trained, I think, harder for the half marathon that I did earlier this year. I really only got into running this year. And yeah, it was tough. Definitely the last couple of kilometers. It was a hot day. I don't know if you remember, but it was a hot day. They sort of talked about it like someone was up on the building with a sniper rifle and people were just pulling up with different, hamstring gone, quad gone, all these people. So it was good. It was tough. It was harder than I thought it was going to be.
Did you get through unscathed?
Yeah, it was fortunate, but definitely cramping towards the end.
But then, so you've done a marathon on the Sunday and then the Monday, you're having to back it up with 2 workouts?
Yeah. It was, Monday was pull. But that was sort of leading into it as well, was pretty consistent. Like, as anyone who's trained for a marathon knows, like the training going into it's actually harder because you've got the whole week's training load. And then those Sunday when you're building up and getting those kilometers on the legs, like I was sort of doing 35-kilometer runs for 3 or 4 Sundays in a row leading up to it. So it was tough, but yeah, you just dial back a little bit on some of the leg training, focus more upper body. It's all doable.
I'm sure you were glad to see the back of the marathon, mate.
Yeah, definitely. But a great challenge. And I think I'd like to do some more endurance training. I think it's so good for discipline. I think more than anything, I don't think it's particularly good for your body, hammering it out all the time. But the discipline, and the goal and the feeling of achieving a goal like that is awesome. And the feeling of getting fitter is so underrated. I think everyone should train for at least a half and get that experience of like a 12, 15 week program that, you're building your fitness over that time and you seriously notice it.
Yeah, I'll bet. Look, that probably leads us quite nicely into the run club that you started. Can you tell us a little bit about how the run club came about and what that looks like today?
Yeah, definitely. So these were separate from the 75-day challenge. So the run club basically came in about 5-6 weeks ago. We had one this morning, so I think this was our fifth actually. And yeah, it was between Jake, Chris, and I. So they're now my housemates that I live with, and they're also in this sort of fitness wellness space. And we're sort of continuously looking at how can we take something from the digital and then put it into the physical. So like this omni-channel experience of building the community, the wellness aspects that we sort of live and breathe every day. And I think the Run Club really encapsulates and manifests everything we push out online. It's sort of this idea of, community, bringing each other up. It's a pretty casual run club. I'm yet to see you down there. But I think like it's to Bondi and Bronte and back. It's every Wednesday morning. We had a sponsor in that covered all the coffees. We get brands in there that want to, showcase a few of their products. And it's just a cool way for us to sort of give back and get in touch with our community, something we do for free as well.
Yeah, great. And so every Wednesday, what time do you meet and where?
5:30 at the Bondi bars. And it's to Bronte and back, and then Jake, or Elaster Boy, holds a little mobility session, and we jump in the water, and then we're at the depot for coffee.
Beautiful. All done by 6:30?
Yeah, exactly. So the idea was as well, do something that everyone can get to work as well.
Yeah, and no need to sign up, just turn up?
Yeah, just turn up.
Beautiful, mate. Great. The other thing I wanted to sort of touch on, it's called the 75 Hard Challenge for a reason. It should be challenge. It should be challenging. It should be difficult. What were the main challenges or difficulties that you encountered over the 75 days?
Yeah, I think the hardest one, and what stopped me in my tracks last time as well, is the alcohol piece. And it's not necessarily not drinking alcohol. It's not socializing because you're not drinking alcohol, or socializing in a different way. And I think you have to be prepared for that. And I would say anyone who's taking on the challenge, accept that you're probably going to see less of a few people because you're just not out as late. And if you are going out that late and not drinking, are you really like getting the most out of the challenge? Probably not. So I think you need to reassess probably your relationship with alcohol a little bit and the way that it's like currently involved. And I think if you're doing the challenge solely for that reason, then first off, well done. That's awesome and all credibility to you. But I think don't expect to have like a flourishing social life straight out the bat doing the challenge. I think it's something that builds into the later end of the 75 Hard Challenge. As I said, things got easier with the people that were still going out and doing those things because they're like, oh, Alfie's 55 days in now. Well, that's actually quite commendable. It's not just something he said he's going to go and do. And then also I think the people that don't drink and were already living in that lifestyle are far more accepting because like, oh, you're one of us now. You're a non-drinker. You need some friends as well on the Friday and Saturday night when everyone's out. So I think it's cool because for me, it opened up loads of doors and people that maybe I wouldn't have socialized as much with if I was out every Friday, Saturday.
So what advice would you give to someone who, has that friendship circle that there is a lot of alcohol involved, but they want to embark on this challenge and they're maybe a bit worried or scared that, that they'll lose that social aspect or that they'll maybe start to feel a bit lonely on a Friday and Saturday night?
Yeah, I think fill your Friday and Saturday night up with something that you love to do. So it could be like watching a movie or having dinner with friends or shared, loved ones, whatever that is. I think it's something there to take your mind off that you're not going out. But then also make the most of your Saturday and Sunday morning because you're now not hungover. Catch the sunrise, go out for a walk, plan a hike. There's so many things that you can now do because you're not getting up at 11 a.m. You're getting up at 5, 6 a.m., whatever time it is where you are. So I think if you're in Sydney and if you're in Bondi, I mean, there's so many great, you got the Friday morning Murph, you've got the 4:40 on a Saturday. Like there's so many reasons to be up and active on a Saturday, Sunday morning that there's just endless opportunity. And even, Friday nights, I think, moving that and transitioning it away from the focus of being alcohol. So moving out of the pub, going outdoors, going for swims, just get creative with it. And I'd also say drag a friend into the challenge. Challenge is so much better shared, like having those shared experiences. And I think, if they're in your friend group, they probably understand or at least know where you're coming from. So hopefully we'll want to jump on board as well.
what was your relationship with alcohol like before the challenge, Alfie, and how did it sort of change, if at all, over the challenge to where you are now?
Yeah, definitely. Alcohol's, I think, like any sort of young, I'm 24, grew up in New Zealand, grew up in Australia, it surrounds you all the time, and it's the done thing. I mean, I think the UK share that as well. It's probably why we get on so well, is that we're all big binge drinkers and we love to party and love to go out. And I still think alcohol is an important part of society in the sense that it brings people together. I think the connection and the ability to go and have a drink and take some of that stress off, or perceived stress off maybe, and have those shared connections and conversations we may not have had without it. You know, there's pros and cons, definitely. But I think the social fabric that it creates and facilitates is really important. And for me, it had always been relatively positive. I think we've all made mistakes drinking. But on the whole, you know, pretty fun. You know, I had birthday in Ibiza. That was awesome. Met some great people. I've met loads of fantastic people I probably wouldn't have met if I wasn't drinking or drinking as much. But it also, like, as someone who spends my life like optimizing my health and spending so much time in the gym and tracking not tracking, but looking at what I eat and working out where the food's sourced, it then just seemed really counterintuitive to be destroying myself on the weekend. And I think because I trained every day, I noticed it so instantly. Like, you really, when you start to get down to that fine tuning of performance, like there's sort of the concept everyone walks around, or not everyone, but the vast majority at around 60%. So they're so far from that 100% potential of what they could be. And I think, like, once you get to that 80% or even 90% and you're fine tuning that last 10%, when you suddenly get dragged back down to 60% or below that because you're hungover or you've had a big night or you're tired, you start to notice it. Like, if I don't get, you know, if I'm hitting 5 hours sleep, like nights in a row, I start to notice it straight away. Or if I eat a really high sugary meal, I notice it. I get the sugar low and I'm like, okay, something's not right here, because I was feeling right up here and now I'm back down. So I think you're way more sensitive to it. So yeah, I think to answer your question around how I was with alcohol before, I think it's almost, you don't know how great you could be until you stop. And that's why I'd encourage everyone in their 20s or 30s or whatever age it is to at least take some period off alcohol, because you'd probably be introduced to it like I was when I was 15, 16.
13.
Yeah, there you go. But you don't really stop, right? Like, you don't stop, because by the time you're 18, you do the uni experience, you do that, and then you go into the corporate structure. Then you're in the corporate structure and everyone's drinking around you, and it becomes like a very social thing, because if you want to like work your way up the corporate ladder, you need to go to the social drinks, and we've built this community around alcohol. So taking it out is a strange feeling. Like, even now I was on the phone to my parents and they're like, oh, you're coming for Christmas, and Jake and Chris are coming as well, which is going to be lovely. And they're like, oh, are you guys not drinking? And it's still like that. It's still like, oh, Christmas is for family and Christmas is about shared drinks. And, you know, there's all of the, where it's extended from all of the, you know, religious components. But I think it's just fascinating how ingrained it is. And I think when you start to look up and stop drinking, you go, oh, this is different. This is strange.
So you finished the challenge. Alfie, have you had a drink since?
I have, yeah. I was in Bali for a conference for work and had a few drinks there, which was fine. I think, again, it's so ingrained in work. A lot of business deals are done over alcohol, particularly in Asia, anywhere in the world. But yeah, it's not like I'm regretting, and I don't think I'll like never drink alcohol again in my life. I think it's more reassessing the way that it's in my life. And then when I drink, making sure it's around like shared connection and for really good reasons. And something that I want to do as well. I think it's important not to feel forced into drinking. And that's a big thing as well, is getting comfortable in situations where other people are drinking and accepting that, and almost learning how to like, be comfortable again. Because it is, being sober is a unique one. I think it's a learnt skill that you've got to put some time into. Yeah,
I've been off the booze now for about 50 days. I'm just trying to go. I've actually sort of set myself my own challenge of going to the end of the year, going through like the wedding season, Christmas, New Year's without drinking, just as a bit of a social experiment, just to see if I can, just to see how it feels, right? And yeah, it's interesting. What I find really helps, and I don't know if you've tried it, I find just getting around the zero alcohol beers in that social environment kind of helps. Having something in your hand like a heaps normal that looks like a beer, tastes like a beer. It actually tastes, those heaps normal quiet XPAs taste like pretty much like a stone and wood. And that's my favourite, like, ale to drink, beer to drink, whatever you want to call it. So just sometimes having that thing in your hand that you're holding and sipping on, I find really helps. I don't know if you got around the zero alcohols?
Yeah, it's been a great insert zero alcohol sponsor.
Yeah.
Right in this
TBC.
moment.
Yeah. Coming soon.
No, yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, that definitely helps. Like anything that's going to reduce, I think the pressure is a big thing. So like, I feel like eyes are always on you if you've got the water in your hand or if you don't have anything in your hand, right? Like we're so conditioned now to be holding something. And I think not having that really makes you feel a little bit uncomfortable and you're like, oh, something's definitely off here. I think a big one for me though is just accepting that like I'm not going to have as much fun not drinking when I go out. Like you have to get out this mindset of like, no, I can have fun without alcohol. It's like alcohol is fun. It is designed to like lower your inhibitions. You're more like, you're an eccentric version of yourself most of the time, like doing more interesting things. You're going to meet more interesting people. So you sort of have to go in and accept, okay, well, if I'm not going to drink, I'm not going to have as much fun tonight. But the benefit is when I wake up tomorrow, I'm going to have an amazing time. And like that, and I think building those like slower releasing pleasure circuits rather than just the short change, I'm going to have a beer and enjoy that pleasure now, is really what the challenge is about. And that's what those 75 days teaches you, is that long, slow release of dopamine and pleasure that comes over the 75 days is so worth waiting for, rather than just being like, oh, quick fix.
Yeah. Are you noticing a generational shift? So I'm sort of 10 years older than you. My generation, we're still very, I think I'm in the minority, definitely. If I looked ahead to like my parents' generation, still very alcohol focused, right? That's still a big part of the culture. But as I look to guys like yourself who sort of are like 10 years younger than me and they're sort of early to mid 20s, I sort of get the feeling that it's becoming less ingrained in the culture. And obviously having this conversation with you today just only enforces that idea as well. Am I touching on something there, or?
Yeah, definitely. I think there'll always be something. That's my opinion. Not to go down the rabbit hole of psilocybin and all the other soon to be or potentially be legal drugs that are coming on, but I feel like there will always be some stimulus that is used by the masses to subdue the day-to-day, whether for the better or for the worse. But I think what's interesting is like we talk about missing generations, but a great example of that is like my generation, or at least in Australia and New Zealand, they really did a great job of ruling out smoking. One, it's super expensive, but it's also like publicly shamed. Like if you were to light up a cigarette in like a closed area or confined area, people will go, cough near you and make it very obvious that they are uncomfortable with that. But what do we have? Vapes everywhere. Like it's amazing how people will look at that and just like clearly the marketing and the way that cigarettes have been stigmatized, they've done a great job of, but then vaping is just like seeped through and got in there. And I think that's why I say there'll always be something. I think we're craving these stimulus and like dopamine releases all the time. So I think sometimes you just have to choose what that release is going to be.
Yeah. All right, let's get back onto the challenge, mate. So when I was doing my research into the 75-hour challenge for the purposes of this conversation, one of the things that I sort of noticed was all the benefits of doing the challenge, how that sort of spills out into other areas of your life. So, for instance, how you perform at work, your relationships with family, friends, your partner, your productivity, your mental health. Some people even start startups as a result of doing or completing the 75-hour challenge. For you personally, and we've touched on a few things, but for you personally, what were the areas that it sort of spilled over into in a positive way?
I think having that time to slow down and assess what's really important to me. So I think it's great for anyone who's like a little bit like, okay, I just feel like I'm rolling through the motions here and on a path that I may not necessarily really want to be on, but it just feels like that trajectory is just like easy to roll with. And it's not like a bad path, but it's not a great path. And I think what the 75-day hard challenge allows you to do is over that 75 days, you're forced to look a little bit inwards, even if you aren't like super inclined to, or you didn't go in with that intention. I think just the challenge of no alcohol, reading 10 pages every day, doing those workouts, setting those tasks, and like having the discipline to complete them every single day and getting that routine. It's like, okay, well, now I've got the structure in my life. I actually have quite a lot of time. I'm not hungover. I'm not going out on a Friday and Saturday. Because of that, I'm seeing these friends less, which gives me more alone time, which is something we rarely have. And I think because of that, you're like, okay, well, how do I want to fill my time? Or like, where do I want to take that as well? So I think that's why people end up, spending more time with loved ones, or they go into businesses, or they sort of start to find that, like, what is that higher purpose, or what do I really want to chase after?
That's beautiful, mate. So 75 days completed. What did you do on day 76?
Day 76, I was in Bali, and it was the same. I didn't actually go out on day 76. It was about day 80 that I decided I'd
Bit of
have
a celebration?
Not really a celebration. It was with work, with some good friends through work. We had a good time, for sure. We're in Bali, so a lovely place to be. But it wasn't really like this. I don't know. I think it's like if you fast, you shouldn't end the fast with a massive, massive meal, right? Like the idea is not to fast and then heavily indulge. But I do also like the concept of software developers, which they use the concept sprints. I like the idea of doing like an intense amount of work in a shorter period and then taking the rest and recovery. I think we're sort of designed a little bit more to operate that way. So I think having like a highly structured, disciplined period of your year where you're like, right, this is where I'm like getting stuff done, and this is where I'm going to work really hard, and that's going to set me up for the rest of the year. So obviously still work to be done, but I think you can like take the foot off a little bit, because we do need to like look around and smell the roses, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely, mate. So you've obviously, we talked about it at the very start of this conversation about you building up that audience on social media. So sitting at 74,000 followers at the minute. I assume, throughout those 75 days, people must have started getting in touch with you, asking you about your training program, your schedule, your diets.
Yeah, definitely. I feel like something that comes with an audience, you realize it's like a big sort of funnel, right? Of people that are interested in what you do, interested in your life. I mean, there's a lot of interesting network and connection that have come through that as well. And yeah, just some general interest in daily habits, building routines, building programs, building, diet, nutrition, what I eat's been a big one.
Yeah. So have you been helping people with that?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, anyone that asks, I'm happy to share the things that I've done with for myself as well. And I guess it's all sort of tried and tested. My approach to most things is like, basically learn, so use some sort of like relatively credible academic source, test it on my own body, see how it responds, and then repeat if it's good.
So Alfie, then what was that turning point, I suppose, of you growing that audience to adding value to your audience?
Yeah, definitely. So I think as I grew the audience, there was this little bit of imposter syndrome. The idea of
Always.
Yeah. I think one, it was outstanding to see that so many people resonated with the message that I was putting out there. I think I'd always known that, living in Bondi, like our friend group, we live such an amazing life, and we have so many like pinch ourselves moments where we're like, God, this is great. I think seeing that validated online really just put that onto another scale, where I was like, okay, not only do I think that we have a great life, I actually really know, because we're connecting now with audiences in the US, the UK, Brazil, India, and they're looking at this life we have in Bondi. And most of the comments and questions, oh, how do I join this friend group? Or how do I get involved in this community? So I think that was awesome to see it resonating through. But I think having that imposter syndrome around, can I actually deliver value to these people? Can I actually tell them how to train, what to eat, how to live? Is that a role that I can play in their life? That was a big question. And a good friend of mine, Chris, not this Chris, but another Chris, we were standing on Bondi Beach, and he basically shared something that his mentor shared with him. And he said, you don't have to be an expert. You've just got to be 3 steps ahead of the person that you're coaching. And I think that sort of made me reevaluate in terms of, okay, I'm not an expert, but I'm definitely 3 steps ahead of someone who's trying to get there. And what we both agreed upon is actually being 3 steps ahead is better because you've trod that path most recently, right? The expert, they're so high up there, they don't even remember what the first 3 steps even looked like. Whereas I've taken those relatively recently. So I think being in that position where you can look back and say, okay, well, here's someone who's coming to me for guidance, and I've taken those steps and managed to achieve a relatively good outcome. Why couldn't I teach them how to do that and provide value that way?
Yeah, and sometimes that's better, mate, because as you said, that expert is usually so far ahead of where that person probably is starting from today. Things might have changed in between, and as you said, you've trodden that path more recently and are maybe more up to date with what's going on in this space here.
Yeah, definitely. And that resonates across, if I'm helping someone out with workouts, nutrition, lifestyle, mindset, or if it's going into how do you build an audience? How do you engage an audience? How do you create value in an audience? I feel like it's like, yeah, the algorithm is a great example of how that changes every single day. It's constantly updating. So I think you need to be in it and be living and breathing it to then be able to go back and deliver value back down the stream.
Yeah. So that was the moment that you were managed to actually shake off the imposter syndrome, or is there still a little bit kicking about today? It never truly leaves you, right?
Yeah, I think it's becoming more normalized. It's crazy how, so like when it first started taking off, which it went from like 3,000 to 10,000 really quickly. Like that was like a day. And it was like one definitive video that took off. And I think when that happened, it was a bit like, yeah, you feel, it's a strange feeling. Like I know that doesn't, to an audience, I know it's just numbers on a screen and I completely get that. But if you put 10,000 people in a room, that's a lot of people. And I think suddenly like, yeah, you feel like you're like looking at your phone all the time. Screen time goes up, that's for sure. And then also you're like walking around, you're sort of thinking like, and then when people, the first person, I think when it like felt really strange was when I was in the gym and someone came up and was like, are you, blah, blah, blah. And that's like a strange feeling as well, because it's a gym I'd always gone to, and it was a gym that I'd gone to for the whole 75 days. And because I'd filmed for the whole 75 days in the same gym, it's like I was doing the same stuff I was always doing, but now there was this like added layer of respect from people that I didn't know that I was doing it, which is a strange feeling because, yeah, at the end of the day, it is numbers on a screen. But those numbers in today's day and era are quite important. And, like, yeah, brands, people seem to care about them.
As you say, mate, a form of digital currency, right?
Yeah, exactly. I guess, like, we're continuously looking as, like, a society for ways to rank, like, status. And I feel like that, like, number on a screen is the most, like, quantifiable way to do it. Which is a really interesting concept. I don't know if it's necessarily positive for society, but it's where we've landed, right?
Yeah, as a society more generally, yeah, absolutely. So, mate, when did you finish the 75 hard challenge?
About a month ago now.
And what's your routine like been since then?
Yeah, pretty consistent.
Have you kept it on?
Yeah, not twice a day, but most days, like today I trained twice. Yeah, pretty consistent with that. I'm trying to think if anything's changed crazy. I think actually an interesting one, if I was to do it again now, which would be very difficult, would be almost the opposite. Like the first one was post every day. Now it'd probably be a 75-day detox from social media, which is the inverse and probably what more people need than to be posting. But now my life is quite synonymous with social media, so
the sponsors aren't going to like that, Alfie, are they?
It'd be a difficult thing to do, but it's amazing. Like, I think one thing I underestimate in the creators world is that screen time goes up. It's about 10 and a half hours a day.
Even doing this podcast, mate, it's not quite like that, but even doing this podcast, my screen time's gone up because I'm posting on Instagram, I'm checking Spotify, I'm checking YouTube, I'm speaking to the producer, like, it goes up, you're right. And I'm not posting anywhere near the level you're posting.
Yeah, definitely. I guess 10 hours, that includes like Spotify, watch time, and there's obviously a few things there. But I do think it's just like a really key thing, which I think I've done well and we do well as a house, because I'm now in almost a creator house, which is so funny because I remember watching people in the US and they're in like these creator houses and I just thought, wow, what a strange concept. But now we pretty much have one between Jake, Chris and I. And I think one of the things that we're really good at is it's focusing about the input, not the output. So it's like whenever we're looking at stuff, it's like, okay, are we delivering value under that education or entertainment pillar? And like, are we actually producing a message that we want to be sending out, not what's getting likes and views. And I think the second like you go into the likes and views, then like the algorithm has you. Like use the algorithm, don't let the algorithm use you. That's my philosophy.
It's beautiful words, mate. Should get that tattooed.
No tattoos, and that will not be the first.
Yeah, fair. So what's next, mate?
Yeah, loads of exciting stuff. I think for me, depending when this airs, it's the transition from what has been an awesome journey in the sustainability climate space with a startup that's seen like rocket growth from 4 or 5 employees to 55 and being a part of that journey to transitioning into, really taking the content stuff full time. I think there's tremendous value that we could deliver. And I say we because Jake, Chris and I have such shared pillars around what we're trying to deliver in terms of our message and across our audience as well. And I think in that health and wellness space, we really want to double down on that and build out a community that could manifest not just in run clubs and activations that we do in a physical landscape, but online as well. So it's really how do we bring people globally together under the shared banner of that, a pursuit of a superior self, I guess is the way that I'm thinking of it. I think just going after holistic health and community and accountability all under that one pillar.
Nice, mate. I need to get the 3 of you on when you've got your brand nailed down.
Yeah.
He's in for a bit of a chat.
Yeah, that'd be great. I mean, we're super for it, and we're so close. We live literally just around the corner.
That's one of the beauties of Bondi, mate. Everyone's just around the corner, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Brilliant. So I think just my last question of the day, Alfie, and thank you for giving up your time today, mate. I really appreciated it. I really enjoyed the chat as well. What advice would you give to someone considering starting the 75 hard challenge?
I think add a few of your own rules as well. I think take what they've got and use that as the base, but also modify them if you need to. If it's not realistic for you to do 2 workouts out the bat, don't do 2 workouts out the bat. 75 days is a long time. It's almost 3 months. I think assess what's actually going to be viable and achievable, but challenging. Like you need the mix in there. But I'd definitely encourage you to do it. I'd encourage you to get your mates to do it as well. Doing it in a team is so much better, particularly if you live with them, if it's a housemate, could be a family member, whatever it is. But go in with really solid intentions, and I think you'll find something that you didn't necessarily know you're looking for.
Fantastic, mate. Look, that's a great place to leave it. Thanks very much, Alfie. I appreciate you coming in, buddy. Cheers.
Cheers.